How's it going, guys? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're going to take a look at another Ruike knife. Just to let you know, Matt over at Ruike Knives Canada did send me a couple of these guys for review, and I think I'm mostly done. I may have one more to look at. I'm not 100% sure, but I guess if you stick around, you'll find out. So today we're going to take a look at this one. It is the 138B, and Ruike came out with, I don't know, 4 or 5 sort of updated models in the last little while, and so that's what we've been taking a look at. Now you can go over to Ruike Knives Canada. I'll put the link in the description box below to buy these. They do have the prices listed as, they do have retail prices listed there rather than MSRPs, and so you can buy it there for about the same price as you can buy it from a retailer. I don't think these are widely available at retailers, so if you're really interested, I think you'll have to go there at least for now, but I'm sure they'll be around at lots of the places you frequent to buy your knives in the next couple of months, and may already be there. So let's go ahead then and get to size and weight on this guy. Actually, one more thing before I say that, you know, this will be about my 10th, maybe 11th Ruike knife, and I've got to say that overall I've been quite impressed with the quality that all of them have had, and this one is going to be no exception. I will say, in use and review, in terms of construction and fit and finish and performance and all of that, I've been pretty pleased. So now let's go ahead with size and weight. 8 3/4 inches overall, so fairly large knife. 3 1/2 inches on the blade there. 5 3/16 on the handle. So just, you know, almost 5 1/4 inch handle there. And this guy is, I don't know, I'm going to call it moderate. It's not the heaviest knife I've seen, and it's certainly not the lightest. So 5.5 inches on the overall weight. Now, how that translates into carrying this knife, I've got to say it actually carries pretty comfortably. No real complaints about having this guy in pocket. It's certainly for its size. 5.5 ounces is not out of the question, and when you look at how much steel there is here and those nested steel liners, as well as a full backspacer, all of those things make that weight fairly understandable. All right, the blade here is 14C28N, which, as you guys know, if you've watched more than one of my videos, I really like as a budget steel, and I definitely find it performs quite nicely and is comparable to, you know, VG10 or even 154 CM. Really nice steel. I've been quite happy with it. And I love that Ruike consistently uses it in models that are not all that costly. Flat grind here with a Tanto blade shape. You got this big swedge kind of tying everything together. So a very angular looking grind on this blade. And I don't hate that, but I also don't love it. I kind of feel like there's a lot of material here, okay? So in terms of performance, this blade is very good. In terms of looks, I kind of wish they did something more like this, where there was, you know, just a little less material. I think this would have been just that much more impressive, because they've really nailed it in terms of making a blade that is thinly ground behind the edge, that is, all the angles are nice and square and straight. And I've got to say, on a budget blade, to see the precision that they've been able to hit on here is really nice. Okay, so I think if you look closely, let's see if I can get the angle right. You know, these grinds are nice and even. You know, all of these angles are nice and crisp. I've got to say, overall, I'm pretty impressed with the way that they finished off this blade. And so from a design standpoint, although I don't absolutely love it, I do have to give credit, because from a performance standpoint, this thing definitely does what it's supposed to do. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about lockup and deployment, because well, the blade is pretty nice. I've got to say, lockup and deployment are probably one of my favorite things about this knife. The lock bar is easy to access. It's, you know, the tension is just right, so it's confidence inspiring but not uncomfortable. There's enough jimping here that it catches your finger without tearing it apart. Those things are all really done right. The flipper tab has no jimping, but I've never really had a problem with slipping off of it or anything like that, even on, you know, these last few days where it's been really hot. You know, it seems to work just fine. Now, the one thing that I have to say about this is the feel of this action is very good. and I got kind of curious and I took this knife apart, and it is on roller bearings, which I really, really like. Now, if you don't know what that means, you know, if you're, you know, typically you get ball bearings, right? So you got a bunch of little balls stuck in this sort of cage. With roller bearings, instead of balls, you have a bunch of rollers, just like it sounds, you know, sort of pins or needle. Sometimes they're called needle bearings. And I just find that they're a little more stable. They tend to be a little smoother. They don't tend to be quite as, you know, guillotine-like. You know, this knife closes very smoothly, but it doesn't just fall shut. And part of that has to do with the weight of the blade as well. But I've got to say, for a knife at this price point, it's really, really cool that it's coming with roller bearings. So, you know, definitely the action on this knife is, you know, definitely above its price point. So very impressed with that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the handle. We have a 3D machined G10 handle with nested stainless steel liners. I've got to say, those two things in themselves are very, very, oh yeah. Thinking of Lockup, there is this backup secondary lock that all it does when you push it up into place, it keeps the lock bar from being unlocked, okay? I don't like the location of it. I don't have any problem with it being there, but being right here on the back of the knife, I find myself often accidentally locking it. Every time I use the knife, I seem to lock it. And then, of course, when I go to shut the knife, it won't shut, and I'm wondering why that is, and it's because I've just accidentally locked it on myself. Not the end of the world. I could live without it, but it's not, you know, I could care less that it's there as well. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing. Now, let's move on to the handle. Really nice construction, really nice sort of extra work done here. You got these nice lines milled in it. It's really nice and grippy and fairly comfortable. Now, I'm not going to give it top marks for comfort because I did cut up a couple of squash with this knife. And if you've never cut up squash, just try it with your folder and see, it'll really let you know what that knife is made out of, because cutting squash is definitely one of the harder cutting tasks you can engage in. And this knife did really, really well at the task. But I did find that when I really, you know, and I really had to bear down. So I had a full, you know, hammer grip and plus pushing with this backhand. And in that very, very difficult cutting task, I did find that the angles here, the corners on the top of the spine there, or I mean on the top of the handle, did get a little uncomfortable. Now, it wasn't so uncomfortable that I had to stop and get another knife or anything, but definitely not a total win along those lines, but pretty stinking good. Okay, so ergonomics, I would say, are good, but not great. Construction, let's quickly, I've told you about the G10 nested liners. Lanyard hole, or the lanyard attachment is achieved using a standoff back here, single position clip, all right, and you can see those liners have been milled out to save a little bit of weight, which I do appreciate, because this could have been a much heavier knife. It's already 5.5 ounces. It could have been even worse, so I do appreciate that. While I was cutting that squash, let me continue with that story just a little bit, because it demonstrates the other point I want to make here. That's, you know, you're really bearing down, and a lot of knives that I have, even a lot of really good folders that I've been very happy with, in that kind of use where you're really bearing down, you'll start to feel things bend and flex and you know, wiggle that you don't think should do all of that. This knife was rock solid, even under a great deal of pressure. As I say, you know, almost my full body weight pushing down to get through that thick skin on the squash, and the knife felt very solid throughout the whole process. So I've got to say, pretty impressed with the construction on this and just the overall durability. The knife was none the worse for wear, even though I actually had to, you know, pound on it to get it into that material a few times. So really, really well done on construction. Ergonomics are good, but not great. Grippiness, I will say, I should point out, yeah, this knife has a lot of traction. You're not slipping up on that blade. Your finger is locked in here at the front, and you're really not going anywhere. So that's my take on the overall construction. By the way, one other point very quickly is the pocket clip works better than I thought. If I show you, if I turn it this way, you can see it doesn't look like there's a lot of space there, but it actually goes in and out of pocket pretty nicely. which I think, you know, they must have had, they've got the tension pretty well dialed in to achieve that. Now it is, of course, single position. We mentioned that a second ago. Now, let's get to some comparisons. We've kind of covered all of the main construction and design points that I wanted to talk about. So let's get this guy up here and pull in a couple of other knives that are in the price point and construction style. Of course, the Rat Model 1 is going to be in most of these videos. You know, it is literally the standard when it comes to budget knives. And let's throw in one other standard here, and that is, of course, the cut jack. The Rat 1 is more similar, okay? Similar size, similar weight, even similar blade to handle ratio. So this would definitely be a very close competitor, although this one in D2 and carbon fiber would cost a little bit more. Probably closer to the price point would be the cut jack, which is definitely you know, similar in price, but not quite as robust in overall build. You know, like I said, when I'm really squeezing on this guy, I don't get a lot of movement. This, if I really squeeze, you know, I can feel those scales kind of flex and bend a little bit. Now again, great knife, absolute, you know, probably, you know, I don't know. I've got to say, I think this is the best budget knife of this year. Really, really well done. But this is going to still be a little more robust, okay? Let's see, what else have we got? How about a pair of two? Everyone likes to see a pair of two, just because people are so familiar with this knife. It gives them a good idea of size. Not terribly comparable, other than, of course, the nested liners. And so I got, you know, again, I really like that as a really classy touch. Finally, let's grab another rake knife here. This is the P135, and both of these are really well done. This guy's a little hefty, of course, and we've talked about that. Stainless steel frame locks usually are heavy for their size. That's kind of what you get. And some of you, by the way, may, you know, I like the styling on this one just a little bit more than this, but you know what, a lot of you watching may feel the exact opposite to that. So there you go, guys. Those are some comparisons. My overall take on this knife, guys, is, yeah, it's a win, okay? Yes, there were a couple complaints that I had about it, but nothing so bad that I would say, hey, you shouldn't buy this knife or you should just ignore it. I've got to say, I'm pretty happy with it overall. Pretty impressed with the construction. The performance on it is absolutely there. I'm not personally crazy about the design, but that's me. You know, you may look at this and think it's the most beautiful thing and you know, it's more beautiful than any other knife that's ever existed. I kind of think it's just a little too angular, but again, that's very subjective. So great EDC, certainly could flex into some harder use or even a tactical type of role. If you dig the design on this, if you really are into the way it looks, the performance is not going to disappoint you, okay? It's definitely more than capable of the job it's intended for. And so, as I say, if you think this looks awesome, I would not hesitate for a second to pick one of these up because it's really well done and it delivers a lot for the price point. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.